welcome to the Pixelated Sausage Show. Hi. How is everyone doing? Hopefully well. I am, of course, your host, Marcus Nez, and this is gonna be a rough episode. I am sick. I am very unwell. It is, I don't know what it is. Hopefully it is gone by tomorrow, but I am recording this late Thursday evening. Just finished streaming not that long ago. I went and laid down a bit more for about an hour or so. Some kind of stomach bug or something or other. It feels like my stomach is eating itself. A lot worse earlier in the day. I've had a lot of turn off the streamers. Fast forward if you don't want TMI, too much information. Had a lot of micro poops. Just like, oh, yeah, a little plop here, a little plop there. Oh, God. It's been a day. I streamed the end of Troublemaker, the most recent game I played. That took me about an hour and 45 minutes-ish. Started a few minutes late, so in that ballpark. And then I was planning to, yesterday, we talked about it, doing some Mario Party after that, but obviously not feeling great, so didn't do that. Still had to do this, though. And that's why we're here. Having a very energetic-less episode where I'm just going to talk about what I've been playing and call it a day. I'm not even sure what news happened. I can't remember what happened since last episode. I guess the ROG Xbox LAX and the Ally, sans the X, have officially come out. Or no, they come out. Did they come out yesterday? I can't remember if they came out would they come out the 15th of Wednesday? I don't know. I feel like they come out officially for everybody, or presumably if they were in stock, you could go to a Best Buy and pick one up tomorrow. 17th is the date that I think of. But the reviews have come out and they're overall pretty good. A lot of the cons are regarding the software not being still there in comparison to SteamOS, which makes sense. I am still very excited about it. I would love to try one, in large part because I want to see how it feels, even though I hear nothing but great things about it ergonomically, in terms of it feeling very similar, not one-to-one, but very, very close to an Xbox One controller, just with the screen in between, which is what I want. That's what makes the PlayStation Portal, that's what it's called, right? That's what makes that device so enticing. But the fact that it is primarily, well, with updates, it's now also a streaming device, but it was at launch and for a very long time a remote play only device. But even with streaming is not something that I really engage with, and I'm not gonna keep my PlayStation Plus subscription when it ends. What a waste of money that was. I did that just so I could transfer my saves. I didn't want to go through whatever other process it was, put it on a USB drive. I was like, fuck it, I'll spend the $60 like a fucking lazy piece of shit, privileged dumbass moron, so that I didn't have to deal with it. I don't even know what I brought over that I really cared about. I don't know, I'm just an idiot. Anywho, let us just get on to what I don't fucking know what I'm going on about. Oh yeah, I was just talking about how the Xbox Ally and Ally X came out. That feels like the biggest news-ish. Well, the biggest release, I guess. Anywho, what I have to talk about in terms of what I've been playing include Ball Pit, which I think that's the pronunciation. I feel like there are some instances where titles that have the lowercase x actually want you to say X, or in some cases, maybe they want you to say cross. But in most cases, like Spy Family, it's just Spy Family. It's not Spy Cross Family. It's not Spy X Family. It's Spy Family. Or Hunter x Hunter. And I think Ball Pit is another example of the X is silent. And in those titles, in those shows, Spy Family, Hunter x Hunter, Ball Pit, fuck off with the X. Why is it there? If it's silent, get it the fuck out of there. I don't like it. But the X is not the same as something like a colon or a subtitle and a title. Because of course we don't ever say Uncharted 2 : Among Thieves. It's just Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. And I feel like the X is trying to get in on that, and I don't like it. But in addition to Ball Pit, got Formula Legends, Duck: Dangerous Ultimate Cartridge Kidnapper, Otherwar Scurge: Hive, and Kotenok. So starting with Ball Pit, which is the big indie release probably of the week. This is the game that I don't know if this is in their description or if I've seen multiple people refer to it as this, but a lot of people are calling it a brick breaker. So think Arkanoid, or why can't I think of the other one? Breakout or Arkanoid meets Vampire Survivors. It is a roguelike game where you are going down these small hallways with brick breaker-esque gameplay. And in addition to all that, in between runs, you can go back to your home base and build out a town, which allows you to collect resources and unlock new characters, give yourself, all of your characters, some kind of permanent buff, and so on and so forth. And you can expand it more and more as you play more and gain resources, earn gold to expand it. It starts off very, very small, and it could quickly expand into something that is very overwhelming. If you have only seen the trailers for the game and you see how large the city space can get, it's very overwhelming from that lack of contextual space where you don't understand or don't realize. It starts off very, very small and manageable, and then it expands. But it's early on, at least, not the worst. But it does quickly. It's already, I've only expanded it, I think, 3 or 4 times, and it's already feeling a little much. But you have all that, your town aspect, and the way you interact with the town and how you collect resources, I think is creative and interesting, utilizing the brick breaker gameplay of you'll have your resource gatherers and then you send them at an angle or straight on or however you want to do to try and get them to ricochet and move through this environment. Moving through a forest base will collect some wood, moving them, hitting a stone will collect some stone, and so on and so forth. So you're trying to send them on the most ideal path to collect the most resources in the allotted time, and so on, which is a fun idea. So there's a strategy in when you're expanding your area, how you decide to expand it so that you can best utilize the space. And there's a strategy to how you place all of your various things, like the resource things, buildings, because buildings are just there and they'll act as an additional wall for them to bounce off of. So there's a lot of strategy in how you build out your city and allowing you to optimize your resource gathering runs. It also has a very, very nice pixel art style that has a bit of that. It feels tangible, like paper crafty in a way, but with that pixel look to it, which I really, really like. And then the core gameplay of the runs you're going on, while I get the comparisons to Brick Breakers like Arkanoid and Breakout with the Vampire Survivors element of just having these large groups of enemies coming at you and having to go through them. I feel like it's more akin to not a horizontal, a vertical scrolling shmup. So think 1942 Ikaruga, just in terms of the gameplay and the up to down nature of it. I get more of that feeling from it, even though it's slower and you don't have the same design. The design is definitely more akin to a Brick Breaker than a shmup where you have the enemies coming in their waves and doing all that. Just terms in how it feels, it's somewhere in between. And it's a very slow game. I always played every run on the fastest speed because just like with Vampire Survivors, I find that a lot of these games tend to start off incredibly slow and it takes a while for things to get going. Vampire Survivors, to me, probably the first 10 minutes of every single run is so tedious and boring. And this one, it's just a general speed thing, so I played on the fastest speed. I would recommend that probably for most people, but you can switch between them. There's 3 speeds, I believe. The first is very slow. You can do it. You can also have it set up so what you're doing is you got your little guy, your little person. There are a whole bunch of characters to unlock with unique balls that they start with, and because there are your generic balls and then your special balls. I'm gonna say balls a lot, so if you're easily amused, ha ha ha. But you have your various characters you'll unlock through playing the game more and more. You start off with your one area, beat it twice to unlock the next area. I'm not sure if it's always beat the area twice to progress, because I've played it just a little bit. And I finished the first area within my first hour. Wasn't super challenging. I'll get to something that will either be a good or bad thing depending on how you like these games in terms of the gameplay. But what you're doing is you're going down these small hallways where enemies are spawning in. They're not really doing it. They're just sitting in place like bricks, and you are firing at them. You can angle your shots like a brick breaker, and then the balls will ricochet off of the walls, and then if they find a pathway to the back, they'll start just doing that in the back. And that is how you're dealing with the enemies. You have your, again, regular standard balls, and then you have your special balls that may inflict lightning damage, earthquake damage, where they have an area effect attack when they hit something. They could deal fire damage, potentially freeze enemies so they stay in place and aren't slowly moving forward towards you. And you want to clear them out, because if they get too low to the screen, they'll start just damaging you repeatedly. You can turn on auto fire or fire yourself. I don't see the point in not turning on auto fire. There's no benefit to that other than unless you're playing as a specific character or get a specific upgrade, you move faster when you're not firing. But I don't think the difference in speed is so substantial to make it worth not auto firing. And I think with some of the perks you can get, because in addition to getting new balls, you can get perks that will increase your movement speed, increase certain ball damage. It will increase your critical chances. It'll make it so that if you hit an enemy on the left side or the right side or in the front, it'll do extra damage. You have a ghost ability that will make the balls travel through enemies until it hits the back of the screen, and then it'll bounce off the back and hit enemies in the back, which I use that one every time I get it. But it is very, and I'll get to this very quick soon. It is very RNG whether or not you can make use of that ability, because there are additional perks that will do extra damage when it's at the back screen, at the back of enemies, and bounce from the back, so that you can really use these two to great advantage. But if you don't have all that, you'll be at a loss when all your balls are in the back of the screen attacking those enemies, but then the ones in the front you're not able to attack with, because I don't think there's a way to call the balls back. And there are some perks I think that will do something if you catch your special balls. Otherwise, there's no reason to catch them either. And I think this is part of why it doesn't feel as breaker to me, or as Arkanoid Breakout E to me, is that you're not ricocheting the balls. Like, you don't have a paddle. Your character doesn't act as a paddle where the balls are bouncing off, and then when they come back to you, you want to hit them back with your character. No, they can just go past you, and then you fire them. Then they replenish in you and you refire them. I think maybe if you catch them, you immediately refire them, and there's a slight faster, essentially what you would call like a cooldown happening there, but it's not that big of a deal, I don't find. But the runs consist of 3 waves that are 2 mini bosses and then your main boss of a run of an area. And that's it. The runs will, I think, maybe last, if you make it all the way to the boss and finish it out, 15 minutes max, in that range. I can't remember if my completed run was 15 minutes or 11 minutes, or if 11 minutes was one of the ones where I got far but didn't quite make it. But regardless, 11, 15 minutes. They're not super long, so it is a very good bite-sized game. Great handheld game. But in terms of the gameplay, so you're doing all that, in addition to every time you level up, getting either a new ball or leveling up a ball or a new perk of that nature, there are these special things you'll pick up that allow you to, they do what you see in a lot of Survivors likes games, where you may get free levels for certain balls or this or that, and you could get up anywhere between 1 and 5 free upgrades. Or when you fully level up balls, max level is 3. When you have 2 or more that are at max level, you will have certain things that you can also do. Instead of getting the free upgrades, you can either fuse 2 balls together so that their powers are fused into 1 ball, allowing you to free up your space, because you can only have 4 special balls at any given time. So in order to have more abilities going on, you can fuse balls together, and that'll open up an additional slot. You can also evolve some balls and some powers together that will give you unique powers to that evolution. With the fusion, I'm pretty sure it's just, here is a single ball that now has both of these attributes. With the evolutions, it takes their abilities and mixes them together in a way that is its own unique thing. So if you have a freeze ball that you evolve with a fireball, it's not exactly going to be, okay, it does fire damage and freeze damage. It's going to do some other kind of cool burning damage or something like that. Whereas fusing is just, hey, we're putting these 2 powers in 1 ball so that you free up a space. So that is an important thing to take advantage of. But what I was getting at earlier, the game is very RNG heavy, as opposed to, it's a very RNG based game, roguelike, as opposed to a skill based one. So a skill based roguelike would be something like Dead Cells or Hades, where Sure, there's RNG. There's RNG at play in all of these types of games. But if you're good enough, you should be able to get pretty far in those games based on your skill alone. Yes, the equipment you have, what you find on a run can help you, but if you are good enough, then you should still be able to do fairly well regardless of what you have on you. As opposed to something like a Vampire Survivors or any game of that nature, really. A lot of survivors likes where the pickups you get when you level up, the power-ups you're offered, and sure, you can re-roll it if you have enough gold, but it exponentially gets more and more expensive to re-roll. But if you don't get the right things to mix and match together, because there are going to be balls and perks and so on that complement each other very, very well. And if you don't get any of that on a run could just be a wash. Sure, you'll still end up hopefully earning some gold and some resources and whatnot for improving your town. And with every run, each of the individual characters also levels up on their own and gets some permanent stat boosts. So they're not completely worthless if a run ends up not working out. But because it is RNG, so RNG based, it's just important. I like that style of game. I don't mind it, but it is something to note that it may not be for you if that is something that you're not a fan of. If you prefer the skill-based roguelikes to this, but in the few hours I played, I've enjoyed it. I'm hoping that with more time, I'll start to love it, because I'm not loving it. I'm liking it quite a bit. I love brick breaker games. I love roguelikes. I can love town building aspects. So there's a lot here that I want that should just click for me very much. But it's just, I think it's the fact that with survivors like the game, I do find that they are a bit slow to build up. But I think one of the strongest things going for it is the fusion and evolution factor of that, which for me, even though it is very RNG based, I do like learning and strategizing with what balls, what abilities to fuse together or evolve, and learning about those. And I find that very enjoyable. Overall, I've quite enjoyed Ball Pit, but I'm only liking it. I'm not loving it. So again, if you are a handheld gamer, I think it's a great one of those. Because any game like this where you have these bite-sized runs you can go on, you can knock out an entire run in 10, 15 minutes, depending on if you complete it or not, I think is great for that kind of experience. That is, again, Ball Pit. Formula Legends is a more arcadey F1 racing game that I like, but I think it's an interesting game because, yes, it is more accessible. It is more arcadey in the F1 space, but it still has a lot of that more simi DNA in it. Aesthetically, it's very reminiscent of something like Virtual Racing, which I adore. So it has a bit of that polygonal look to it, but much more higher fidelity. And it runs well. It feels pretty good. You have a few accessibility options to add traction control, ABS, stuff like that. But even with that stuff turned on, it can, especially with tighter turns, you can be fairly prone to going off the track. And I was just doing the story mode, which consists of races across decades. And the races are long too, which doesn't lend it well to being an arcade racer. The first race in the 60s era one is, I think, 11 laps. And you have to do the qualifying races, which are 2 laps for every race. You can't skip those. So it's not a very bite-sized game, going back to something like Ball Pit. And you'll have to worry about tire degradation, your fuel, your body, and all of that stuff. You choose between your tires. Do you want hard tires? Do you want soft tires? Do you want wet tires? Depending on the situation and so on. And you'll have to worry about caution and things. You go off the track too many times, you'll end up in the penalty, and you'll just be docked time every time you go off and so on. And I don't know if you can turn off that stuff in the more in like the exposition mode, or just doing a singular race as opposed to the story mode. But because it still has a lot of that simmy stuff with it, I find that as much as I enjoyed playing it, I thought to myself, well, why am I not just playing a proper F1 game? And I get it, it's still smaller scale. It is a different look to it. It is just an in-between between an actual arcade game and a sim game. It falls in between. And I think that's cool. I think there's an audience for that. But for me, I either want the arcade experience or the sim experience. And this in-between game doesn't quite click with me. When the entire time I was playing, I was thinking to myself, I would kind of just rather play virtual racing or finally play an F1 game and really get into that and the weeds and all that. This is, I guess this is for someone who is already in the weeds with F1 games, who loves those games, but wants a more bite-sized version of that. I think that's probably the audience for this, is the people who, because I look at someone like me who has not gotten that into F1, but has dabbled with it. I watched my first F1 race this year and really enjoyed it. I've watched a few now, but I'm waiting until the next season to really get invested into it. I'm gonna check out the Netflix documentary. And I don't look at F1 and think, I want to work my way towards a proper one. I just want to get into it. So I think Formula Legends is either for the F1 fan who wants something a bit more bite-sized that they can play here and there, or the person who does want to kind of ease their way into F1. But for me, I just want to go head first. I just want to dive head first into it. So, good game. There's some DLC announced for it recently, and I want to play more of it. But and my tune might change with more time in it. But I was just a little surprised by its kind of in between. So I was expecting more of a arcade experience, but especially the lap length, or not the lap length, but the number of laps. I was like, oh man, starting off already with 11. I'm curious if in the later decades, because it has 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 20s, 2000s, and then 2010s. And with all of them, I think there are maybe like 3 cups of however many races with 60s, and then 4 with the 70s. And because they do, I think they do just the 60s, then early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, and then just 2000s, 2010s. So there's a decent amount there. It also, this could be something that turns people off. There's no multiplayer of any kind, not online, not local, and that's a little bit unfortunate. So it is a single player only game that has its story mode, which is just these various races. There's no kind of narrative going on with it, or then you can just do stuff on your own, a singular race. So there is a decent amount there to keep you busy, but if you do want to play with friends or stuff like that, then you're going to be out of luck there. But that is Formula Legends. I think a solid game that just isn't quite for me in what I want from an F1 racing game, whether it be arcade or semi. Just a little bit too in the middle between the two types of games. Next, we have Duck Dangerous Ultimate Cartridge Kidnapper. This is a mini game fest where narratively there's some dude who's fucked with all these ducks for some reason or whatever, they find a cartridge of 100 games in one. And something happens, I don't remember, where the dude inside the game is like, oh, I'm gonna fucking curse you. You need in order to progress, you need to save yourself by all individual ones of you have to play 20 games in a row. And if you can, you'll be all good. And I'll give you 5 lives to make it through. So you're just playing a bunch of short, brief mini games. What I presume, having not played a WarioWare game, it's what those things are like, where you're playing these bite-sized mini games back to back to back, trying to make it through all of them without dying too many times. And that's that. I played about 20 of these mini games, and I did not like any of them. They're not fun to play. It feels like there is more of an input delay with this game. It didn't feel super responsive in some cases. It's weird too that when you die, you can retry by inputting cheat code, which is a few directions on the D-pad. You get 5 seconds to do it. It's very, very easy to do this. So you don't have to lose a life unless you are struggling with a minigame and you just can't complete. You can move on and lose one of your lives. A lot of the minigames just suck or don't feel good in this way or that way. There's a Flappy Bird, like, for instance, that your on-screen character is like a flying little duck with a pompadour or something. And you are just big enough to make it through the gap, but it doesn't feel consistent in terms of when your hair can go through the ceiling, the top part of a gap or not. It feels very inconsistent. There was one where I was moving a pile of shit as a dung beetle, and then I would have to keep kicking away the oncomer. That didn't feel that great. I think there was a duck hunt like, and some others. It didn't have any of the humor in the story to keep me interested, and all the mini games. Not a single one was like, oh, that was fun. It was like, oh, glad that's over with. Not super challenging, and with the cheat code thing to retry, it doesn't get progressively harder. So the way I did the original mode, because there are, I think, 4 different difficulties you can pick from when doing one of the character's specific runs in the story campaign. I think easy is 9 levels or 10 levels that are all of easy difficulty. Then there's a medium one that has 10 easy ones and 5 medium ones or something like that. And then hard, which is maybe like 5 easy, 5 medium, 5 hard or some shit like that. But the cheat aspect doesn't get progressively harder with more inputs for you to do or less time as you get deeper into a run. And then the original one is all the 20 mini games. I think the first 10 are easy, then 5 medium, 5 hard ones or something like that. But yeah, with that cheat code system, again, unless you are having difficulty and don't believe you can even complete a mini game, you can just keep trying and trying and trying again. You can also practice any mini game beforehand to know exactly what you have to do, because if you don't do the practice, you're not given any real explanation. It'll just have the controller on screen with what button you'll have to use for the game, but you don't know exactly what you have to do. But yeah, it just wasn't very fun. None of the mini games and the stories, not funny or anything. That, though, again, was Duck Dangerous Ultimate Cartridge Kidnapper. Otherwar is a tower defense game with 9 levels where you're placing your towers as the waves come in, and you can attack enemies at the same time. Very, very simple, very straightforward. What I don't love about it is that it feels very grind heavy. The balance seems off, where the first level is incredibly easy. and you earn XP through beating the levels, killing enemies, but also there are challenges that are tied to them that you can complete and so on and so forth. But once you get to the second level, it becomes much more overwhelming, where the towers, there doesn't seem, one, to be much strategy to how you place your towers, where you place your towers, how you upgrade your towers. I tried a whole bunch of different things. It didn't seem like that, but it feels more like, okay, you're meant to grind things out and earn XP so that you can level up your skills for your specific character so you do significantly more damage yourself and fire faster, move faster, have these other additional abilities, and so on and so forth. So, and I found that as you upgrade your character more and more, then it becomes trivial to even using the towers, where it's just like, okay, well, they're there if need be, but the more I upgrade the character, the more I don't even think about the towers. And it's just, I don't know. It seems like it's balanced in that way to stretch out the game, because it is fairly low on content with just these 9 levels, 3 different difficulties, and that's that. It kind of reminds me of that other game I played recently where you're defending trucks as they're going down a path from enemies that spawn in, and that had a similar kind of grindy system to it. Though the way the towers work, or you're upgrading your little watchtowers, they were important, but that is also part of how you would level up, where you would get your starting cash more and more and more. But I don't know. Otherwar didn't do a whole much for me. Scurge Hive is a Game Boy Advance game that was ported to DS and is now available on modern hardware thanks to Rodolika Games. Now, this is a game I've never heard of. I didn't know about it. It's a bit of a isometric type of Metroidvania thing where you play I guess I'll just call you an astronaut. But the Scurge is this alien thing that people were messing with, and it's infected people. It has infected you as well, but your suit has made it so that the infection attacks you much slower. But what it adds to the gameplay, which I find very fun and gives a nice little, puts a nice hook on the game, is that when you're progressing through this space station after your ship is infected and destroyed, and then you have to escape from it, as you're exploring this facility, wherever it is, because I've only played a little bit of it, and it has a lot of the things that Rodolika ports of these older games have: save states, rewind, fast forward features. You can activate certain cheats that'll give you infinite lives, all your upgrades, so on and so forth, which is nice. They don't have the greatest UI. I kind of wish they would clean up the UI a bit with their re-releases of these older games, but just getting these games on modern hardware is really nice. But the way it all works, and you have your little basic blaster gun, you can only fire in the direction you're looking, so it's not quite a twin stick shooter in that sense. But as you're exploring the facility, you are slowly, the infection in you is slowly building up, and the only way you can do it is by going to a save room, what works as a save room, but also has a little station in the middle of it that will cleanse you that will detoxify you, essentially. And so you have to, while exploring the world, you have to constantly pay attention to that, because when it gets to 100%, you'll start taking damage very, very quickly. And it adds this level of stress to exploring the world, where you have to look at the map. Okay, do I think there's going to be a new one I'm going to find soon, or do I have to go back to the old one and detoxify myself and then return and continue searching from here? I like that a lot. It's a cool mechanic, cool system that adds something to the experience. Mechanically, it feels pretty good. It feels all right. it definitely feels like a Game Boy Advance game that has the limited control method in terms of it being a D-pad based game. But overall, I think it feels pretty good. The one part where it can not be great is in the platforming. When you're trying to jump on these platforms in this 3D space, it's not always the best or the easiest to see exactly where you are or where exactly you need it. It can be a little finicky, and that can be frustrating. But overall, I like the look of it. I like the vibe of it. I like the infection aspect to it. And I'm pleasantly surprised about it. I would like to play more of it. And I plan to play some more of it. Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. It's just nice. It's always nice when you see games, especially something like this that you could, I'm sure for many people is a hidden gem, because I've never heard of it. But now I'm able to check it out easily. I don't have to use an emulator or find a copy of it to play on my Game Boy Advance, my Analog Pocket, so on. So I always like seeing that. It's always nice. And this is one of the cases, because if they put out some other things where I look at it, I'm like, oh, this is probably good for people who really like this game, but I don't think this is something that new people should try out. This is a case where, and I think it's because of the era, the Game Boy Advance was a great system, a lot of great games that people missed. I'm still annoyed that Ninja 5.0 did not get an Xbox release. Fingers crossed it ever does. I don't think so. I don't think Limited Run's going to give a shit about that happening. But that's another case. That was probably the biggest hidden gem of the platform that I was heard about. But now we have this one. That's a pretty solid thing to check out. And then the last game I played is Kotenok, which is this very simple side-scrolling platformer. You play as a cat, and it's all right. You have a double jump, and you're just trying to reach the flag to end a level. However, in what I played, I found it very, very frustrating because it can be very picky with how it handles hit detection. You take one hit and you die. And it seems that because you can jump on top of an enemy, very early on they'll add enemies in the game. You can jump on top of an enemy like Mario to kill it. But it seems like, or there's something weird going on where if you're jumping onto an enemy from too high of a height, then either there's something where it's like, okay, you didn't jump on this from the right base of the... If you're too high and you jump on top of an enemy, you're going to die. And it made for times where I would be getting through a level, I'd almost be at the end, and then I would jump and I'd land on an enemy, but because I was too high, I guess, that's the only assumption I had for why it worked that way, that I wouldn't end up killing them and I would die and have to restart the entire level. And that was happening more and more. I was just getting really, really annoyed with the game. So it's super simple and whatnot, but I found it to be very, very surprisingly finicky in a frustrating way. It doesn't look that great either, but it has some good music in it, which was the bummer. I was like, oh man, I kind of like this music. Why can't you be a better feeling game? Bit unfortunate. Level designs aren't all that interesting either in the ones I play in the first 10 or so levels. So, yeah. Bit of a bummer there, because I tend to find a lot of these smaller scale, bite size, you can say easy achievement, side-scrolling platforms to be very good for what they are. They're typically really enjoyable 30-minute games, roughly. Like they're never gonna have the legs that you might want, but for a nice single sitting experience, they're typically good for that. No. This one got frustrating way too quickly for my taste. That is, again, though, Kotenok. And that is going to do it for this year episode of the Pixelated Sausage Show. Once again, I am Marcus Nez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you enjoy this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can support me and my nonsense over at patreon.com/PXS. There you can get access to the sausage dump where I talk about this, that, and whatever, as well as a private Discord channel and some fancy Discord roles depending on your tier, of course. Or you could just support me if that is your fancy. That is, again, patreon.com/PXS. In addition to the Patreon, you can find links to the site, the YouTube, the Discord, and so much more over at PX Sausage. That is pxsausage.com. That is the letter P, the letter X, sausage.com. But that is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoy this here episode, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. But for now, adios, arrivederci.